It was just another mundane lunch break at that downtown cafe. The kind where you pretend to be fascinated by your coffee's foam art to avoid eye contact with strangers. That's when Alex walked in, the new guy, with a smile that suggested he knew just how mundane my day had been until he arrived. Tucking my wedding ring into my purse felt like the first step down a path I hadn't planned on taking. But there I was, flirting back, telling myself it was innocent. 2 weeks flashed by in a blur of secret texts and stolen glances. Next thing I knew, I was fabricating a business trip to spend a weekend with Alex at a secluded beach house. The thrill of secrecy was intoxicating, a rush I hadn't felt in years. Just this once, I lied to myself, fully aware I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. David found a text from Alex one evening, his face crumbling as he handed me my phone. "Just a new colleague," I stammered, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. I saw the hurt flash in his eyes, quickly masked by disbelief. He wanted to trust me, and I exploited that trust, convincing myself we could move past a lie so easily told. The affair with Alex became an addiction, each lie to David a brick in the wall I was building between us. Working late again, I'd say, or, another last-minute business trip, can you believe it? The lies slipped out effortlessly, my double life spiraling out of my control. Then came our anniversary. David surprised me with tickets for a vacation, his way of reigniting the spark between us. Guilt washed over me like a cold shower, but the call of adventure with Alex drowned out any warning bells. How had I become this person? "Sorry, love, got to go to Paris for work," I lied, ignoring David's text filled with heart emojis as I explored the city of lights, not with my husband, but with my lover. Paris with Alex was a dream, yet even the Louvre and Montmartre couldn't fully mask the guilt gnawing at my conscience. The inevitable crash came when David hired a private investigator. I came home to find him sitting in the dark, photos spread across our coffee table. Pictures of Alex and me, undeniable in our intimacy, were the silent witnesses to my betrayal. David's eyes met mine, and I knew. I had torn us apart, one lie at a time. The moment I confessed, the world stood still. David's silence was a chasm between us, his swift departure a punctuation mark on our life together. "I'm sorry," I whispered into the void he left behind, but sorry was just a word, too small to bridge the gap. Moving in with Alex should have felt like a new beginning, but the charm of our secret encounters quickly faded in the harsh light of day-to-day life. Our small apartment became a cage of reality, the initial euphoria dissolving into the mundane. I missed home. I missed David. I reached out to David, each call a plea for understanding, for a second chance. But all I got in return was a cold, formal legal separation notice. The finality of it, the impersonal lines of text, made it clear, there was no going back. Through a mutual friend, I heard about David. He was out there, looking both devastated and determined. "He's consulting lawyers," they whispered, and the words hit me like a physical blow. This was getting real, too real. Then, the unthinkable happened. My bank accounts froze overnight. David was playing hardball, citing my affair as grounds for divorce and going after everything we'd built together. Panic set in as I realized the full extent of my isolation. The legal battles that followed drained me, not just my savings, but my spirit. Each court appearance, each legal document, was a reminder of the mess I'd made. The reality of my situation was a bitter pill, and I was swallowing it alone. Alex's true colors began to show, his once charming attentiveness replaced by control and indifference. Nights I'd spend reminiscing about David's gentle love, the contrast so stark it was almost unbearable. I'd traded a diamond for a stone, and the weight of that realization was crushing. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you do, please take a moment to hit that like button. It really helps me out and lets me know you appreciate the content. Also, if you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. Subscribing is a great way to stay updated with all the latest videos and to be part of our growing community. It's quick, it's free, and it ensures you won't miss out on any upcoming content. So go ahead, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Your support means a lot and keeps this channel going. Thanks for watching. The day the divorce papers arrived at my work was the day my world publicly crumbled. There I was, papers in hand, as whispers snaked through cubicles. The shame was a cloak I couldn't shed, my private failings laid bare for all to see. In court, David's lawyer was relentless, laying out evidence of my betrayal like a well-played hand of cards. The courtroom's air was thick with judgment, the sympathy clearly not in my favor. I felt every eye on me, branding me the villain in my own story. When the judge ruled in David's favor, awarding him the house and most of our assets, it felt like being stripped of my identity. Each word from the judge was a nail in the coffin of the life I once cherished, a life that now felt like a distant dream. Back in the cramped reality of the apartment with Alex, the dream soured further. Financial strain and constant bickering eroded what was left of our connection. The man I'd risked everything for was now a stranger, our conversations a minefield of resentment. Seeing David's life flourish on social media added salt to the wound. There he was, the picture of renewal, surrounded by friends and diving into new hobbies. The stark contrast between his ascent and my descent was a daily torture. The day I confronted Alex about the state of our relationship, his response was a cold splash of reality. "I never saw a future with us," he admitted, his words slicing through any fantasy one still harbored. It was a confession, a closing statement to our brief, tumultuous affair. The fallout was immediate and personal. My career, once on an upward trajectory, took a hit as whispers turned into loud judgments. A demotion followed, my professional standing another casualty in a long line of losses. Alone, I was forced to confront the magnitude of my mistake, a realization as bitter as it was late. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, David's face started appearing everywhere. There he was, launching his own business, smiling out from local news stories, his success a sharp contrast to my spiraling downfall. Each headline was a reminder of what I'd lost and what he'd gained from our divorce. Then came the party at a mutual friend's house, the first time I'd seen David since the divorce. Our eyes met across the room, but his gaze was empty, devoid of any recognition or warmth. It was clear in that brief look. There was no going back, no hope of even a semblance of our past connection. Alex's departure was swift and merciless. One day he was there, the next, gone, leaving behind a trail of unpaid bills and a broken lease in his wake. The realization that I was truly alone, without even the false comfort of his presence, was a bitter pill indeed. The financial ruin that followed felt almost inevitable. Legal fees from the divorce and losing nearly everything to David pushed me into bankruptcy. The shame of living paycheck to paycheck, of falling so far from the life I once knew, was a constant companion. Depression crept in, a fog that thickened with each passing day. Friends, or those I once considered friends, distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the scandal I'd become. The isolation was profound, a daily reminder of the consequences of my choices. In a moment of desperation, I reached out to David. Not to ask for forgiveness or a second chance, but for closure, a final attempt to understand and to be understood. My messages went unanswered, his silence a deafening confirmation of the finality of our split. The rumor of David's engagement was the cruelest cut of all. Hearing about it felt like a physical blow, a visceral reminder of my replacement and erasure from his life. The realization that I was truly forgotten, replaced in his heart and life, was the harshest truth to accept. Clutching at straws to find some semblance of normalcy, I found myself at the door of a support group for divorced individuals. As I listened to stories mirroring my own tales of betrayal and loss, it was both comforting and heartbreaking to know I wasn't alone in my suffering. The job hunt was humiliating, a stark reminder of how far I'd fallen. Finally landing a position that was a shadow of my former career felt like scraping the bottom of the barrel. Yet, the monotony of the work offered a respite from the chaos of my personal life, a dull balm for my frayed nerves. When David married again, the news spread like wildfire, the blissful photos on social media a glaring contrast to my solitude. Seeing him so happy, so quickly, felt like reopening a wound I thought was beginning to heal. At the new job, overhearing colleagues whisper about David's latest success was a daily torture. His name, once a source of love and comfort, now brought only regret and pain, a constant reminder of everything I'd lost. The decision to downsize was both practical and symbolic, selling off pieces of a life that no longer existed. Each item sold, each memory parted with, was a step away from the past, but also a stark reminder of the cost of my choices. Then came the health scare, a jarring confrontation with my own mortality. Lying in the hospital bed, surrounded by the sterile, impersonal walls, the absence of visitors underscored the profound loneliness of my new reality. The stark contrast to a past filled with love and companionship was a low point, a realization of how isolated I'd become. Recovery was a slow and humbling process, but it offered a silver lining, a chance to reassess my life and priorities. Volunteering emerged as a beacon of hope, a way to give back and find purpose amidst the wreckage of my decisions. Helping others became a small step towards redemption, a way to piece together a sense of self-worth from the ruins of my former life. Running into an old friend, or rather, someone who used to be a friend, was like walking into a glass door you didn't see. The conversation was laden with awkward pauses and pitiful glances that made my skin crawl. "I hope you're doing okay," they said, their eyes betraying the kind of pity that felt worse than outright disdain. It was clear I was a cautionary tale, a story they'd recount with a shake of their heads. In the midst of this personal desert, volunteer work became my oasis. The act of helping others, of doing something that wasn't about me or my mess, offered a sliver of peace. Yet, even as I cherished this newfound purpose, it was hard not to see it as just a drop in the bucket compared to the ocean of my mistakes. Cleaning my tiny apartment one day, I stumbled upon an old photo of David and me. Our smiles were wide, carefree, the kind of happiness that now seemed like it belonged to someone else. Holding the photo, I was struck by a wave of nostalgia so strong it was almost physical, a longing for a time before I made the choices that led me here. Starting a blog was an impulse, a middle-of-the-night idea that felt like it might be worth something. I poured my heart out anonymously, detailing my journey without names or specifics, but with enough honesty that it couldn't be anything but true. Writing became my therapy, a way to untangle the mess of emotions and events that had defined my life for so long. To my surprise, the blog resonated with others. Comments trickled in, then flowed, stories of betrayal, of heartbreak, of trying to rebuild after everything falls apart. A community formed in the shared space of our collective grief, a reminder that no one navigates pain alone. Then came the letter that felt like a punch to the gut, a legal notice from David's lawyer accusing me of defamation through my blog posts. The thought of facing David in court, of reopening wounds that had barely begun to heal, filled me with dread. Court was a blur of legal jargon and cold stares. Standing there, facing David and his legal team, I was acutely aware of every choice that had led to this moment. Yet, when the case was dismissed, relief washed over me. It wasn't a victory, just the closing of another painful chapter. The courtroom, with its sterile indifference, was a stark reminder of the consequences of my actions, a silent witness to the cost of seeking redemption in the wake of self-inflicted ruin. Just when I thought I had a sliver of space to breathe, to vent, the universe yanked the rug out from under me, again. The blog, my digital confessional, was shut down, a casualty of legal battles and settlements. It felt like being gagged, stripped of the one thing that made me feel heard amidst the chaos of my own making. So, I turned to therapy, a move that reeked of desperation and, maybe, a bit of hope. Sitting across from a stranger, unpacking the baggage of my choices, felt like trying to climb a mountain with my legs tied. Hard, painful, but necessary. "You've got to face this head on," my therapist said, her voice a mix of sternness and warmth. And face it I did, week after agonizing week. The loneliness, though, that was a beast of a different kind. It clung to me, a constant reminder of the bridges I'd burned. Therapy offered glimpses of understanding, tiny breakthroughs that felt like finding pieces of myself I thought were lost. But outside that room, the reality of my isolation hit hard. Friends, family, David, they were worlds away, living lives I was no longer a part of. A year after the divorce was final, I found myself walking past our old house. It was an accident, really, a wrong turn on a long walk trying to clear my head. But there it was, our house, only it wasn't ours anymore. David had moved on, the place transformed in ways that made it clear I had no place there, not anymore. The sight of it, so familiar yet so alien, was a gut punch. Money, or the lack thereof, became a constant source of stress. I picked up a second job, the physical toll mirroring the mess of my inner world. Juggling bills, dodging calls from creditors, the hustle was relentless, a daily grind that left me drained. Then came the news that knocked the wind out of me. David's wife was pregnant. It wasn't just the fact that he had truly moved on. It was the realization that any lingering fantasy one had of us reconciling, of finding our way back to each other, was just that, a fantasy. The finality of my exclusion from his life, from a future I once thought would be ours, was undeniable. In those quiet moments alone in my cramped apartment, the full magnitude of what I'd done to my life hit me. Reflecting on the journey from that first, seemingly innocent flirtation with Alex to the utter devastation of my marriage, my career, my sense of self. The weight of my choices was crushing. The pain of acknowledging my role in my downfall, of seeing the destruction I'd wrought with clear eyes, was sharp, a cut that went deep. Standing alone, surrounded by the remnants of a life I once knew, the truth was stark, unforgiving. I was alone, not because of some twist of fate or cruel turn of the universe, but because of me. My choices, my actions, had led me here. The loneliness, the loss, the pain, I had no one to blame but myself. It was a bitter pill, a hard truth to swallow, but swallow it I did. Facing that reality, owning the mess I'd made, was perhaps the first real step toward something like redemption. Or, at the very least,